More than 230 displaced Abaconians calling the Foxville Community Center home. We spoke to a few of them and we'll tell you how it is straight ahead.
The Ranfurly home is now the home for children evacuated after Hurricane Dorian.
Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Vaughn Tude. Topping news tonight amid calls by some Florida lawmakers for the United States to relax visa requirements to enable Bahamians who survived Hurricane Dorian to stay with relatives in the United States. President Donald Trump told reporters today that the U.S. has to be very careful because he doesn't want very bad gang members and drug dealers in the Bahamas to get into the U.S.
We have to be very careful. Everybody needs totally proper documentation because the Bahamas had some tremendous problems with people going to the Bahamas that weren't supposed to be there. I don't want to allow people that weren't supposed to be in the Bahamas to come into the United States, including some very bad people and some very bad gang members and some very, very bad drug dealers.
Trump insisted that the U.S. is also recovering from the hurricane and suggested that residents of the devastated islands could go to the large sections of the Bahamas that were not hit by Dorian. His comments came one day after storm survivors in Freeport were ordered off a Florida-bound boat if they did not have a U.S. visa. 4,800 Abaco and Grand Bahama residents have been evacuated since Hurricane Dorian pummeled those islands. Displaced Abaco residents say they are comfortable at the Foxville Community Center, but only temporarily. Many expressed anxiety about the future. Jared Higgs reports.
Some arrived by boat and some arrived by plane, but all of them are calling the Foxville Community Center home, at least for the time being. Many of them say that the basic necessities, food, water, clothing, a place to sleep, all that is being provided, but the question is, what's next?
This is the only place we have to go. There's no place else. It's no Abaco.
54-year-old Eliza Albury should have been in Abaco watching her grandkids start their first day of school.
Altogether, I have 11.
Instead, she spent the morning watching other school children from the porch of the Foxville Community Center. It's where Albury and nearly 230 displaced residents, some from Abaco, call home for the time being.
I wouldn't complain about it. It's like I said, God didn't bring us this far to leave us.
Albury, a cook who lived in Marsh Harbor, says while she is grateful for life and a place to sleep and eat, she is concerned about what the future holds for her and her family.
I would like to find a place, a job, and do what I can for myself.
Albury and her fellow shelter residents are fed 3 square meals a day. Breakfast on Monday morning included sandwiches, muffins, and chicken sauce. Residents can check in and out, and donations have been coming in huge numbers. The large hall where they sleep is filled with dozens, if not hundreds of blow-up mattresses. It is air-conditioned and smells pleasant enough. During a visit to the center earlier today, Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis and his entourage got their own view of the inside.
As far as everything goes, it's better than nothing.
24-year-old Michael Frederick, like many others who braved the storm, has horror stories of how he survived. He arrived in Nassau by boat late Friday, but days before, he was wading through miles of water searching for his mother. Luckily, she and his other family members were unharmed. He says getting to Nassau wasn't easy.
The boat ride was 7 hours long. The evacuation process was slow and hectic. There were a lot of people waiting.
Shelter manager Maria Kelly tells Our News that opportunities have been popping up for residents of the shelter.
A visitor came yesterday who had a business, and he said to 2 of the men, I can take you to work for 1 day today.
As for those who want to travel, Kelly says she is trying to get concrete information on that to provide the people staying in the shelter. For Eliza Albury and many others, the hope is that their lives can return to normal as soon as possible. The reality is that the path isn't so clear at this time. What is obvious is that those who have been displaced won't forget where they came from.
That was my home for 28 years. Marsh Harbor.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jared Higgs.
As evacuees attempt to return to some state of normalcy, many of them turned up at the passport office today to begin the process of replacing lost and damaged passports. Giorgio Bain has that angle.
When our news arrived at the passport office on University Drive Monday afternoon, we met scores of residents from ABACO and Grand Bahama attempting to get their passports replaced. However, according to LETIKA Cooper, that process wasn't easy.
It was crazy earlier because we thought that they would have some kind of sympathy when it comes to the ABACO and Freeport victims, because that's what it is, but it's been crazy because a lot of people in this line didn't have any documents at all, so how do you want them to go and find this birth certificate?
Cooper and her family rode out the storm in Dundas town. She recalled as she laid in bed with her 2 children watching the roof crumble on top of them. Half of the duplex she lived in completely detached from her home. Cooper said if it wasn't for the eye of the storm, she's not sure if her family would be alive.
We live in a wooden house, so the roof is just waving. So when we saw that, we got up and we packed our bags and got our documents and stuff, and we said we're going to try run and try get out to my mom's house. But when we went to the front door, our neighbor's house was already gone. So when we opened the door, their half of the apartment was already gone. So we closed the door, and when we looked, the kitchen roof started to come down. So we ran in the bathroom, and we had all of the kids inside the tub, and I was on top of them with a mattress over our head, and all of the roof, everything was just falling on top of us.
Adrian Bethel rode out the storm in Marsh Harbor, ABACO with friends and family.
When the roof and the part of the house came off, and they were all talking about grabbing their things and getting ready to run, that was when I just looked around and I was like, this is probably the part where all of us die.
Miss Crystal Key, Alexis Sawyer, was outside the passport office assisting her father in replacing his passport. Sawyer said her family has lost the entire second story of their home, and the ABACO she once knew is gone.
It was a total nightmare, and where we were staying, it was a large group of us, and you could actually see the roof starting to come off.
Annie Sawyer, who fared riding out the storm in her residence on Elbow Key, ventured to the main line to seek shelter.
We had to evacuate right away. We had to run 2 or 3 different times to different establishments. Roofs are flying off. At one point we were in our van trying to escape to another place, driving down the highway, and the wind was literally blowing us off the road.
According to Annie, they were forced to hit the road in 200-mile-per-hour winds.
We had to drive somewhere else, and thankfully somebody let us inside, and we stayed with them. This is all during the first part of the storm. We stayed with them, and right away, the roof is shaking. One half of the house, because it was a half concrete, half wooden house, and the wooden part, where the bedrooms and stuff were, came off.
Along with having life-changing stories about Hurricane Dorian, the residents seem to have the same complaints and requests.
There's a lot of help that wants to come in, but it's being blocked. So it could be better.
Even friends of mine have to sneak around to bring things in to the resort at Boat Harbor just to land stuff in because they're sending them away. A family member of hers tried to send supplies down, and she couldn't pay the VAT on it, so they took her stuff.
Yeah.
Because she couldn't pay the VAT, and I think that's disgusting.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Giorgio Bain.
The church community coming together to bring relief to those hardest hit by Dorian. 2 pastors who made it out with only the clothes on their back shared their stories of survival. Kyle Joaquin reports.
An emotional scene inside Bahamas Harvest Church Sunday as 2 pastors, one a Hurricane Dorian survivor from Grand Bahama, and another from ABACO, share a moment after losing everything in the storm. Pastor SIMEON OUTTEN of Freeport, Grand Bahama, lost his home for the 2nd time during a hurricane. He and his wife now safe in Nassau after having left Grand Bahama with only the clothes on their back.
I realized the storm can take my home and my car and the furnitures, and I'm thankful to my good brother and friend Ricardo Clark, who has reached out and said, "Sim, come, let's see if we can." And we came here yesterday with only the clothes on our back. We have no clothes, but I have my faith.
But the story of survival from Pastor Sam Cornish from ABACO left hardly any dry eyes in the congregation as he shared how he and his family's home was trashed right before their eyes. He said they made it out during what he thought was the eye of the storm and sought shelter 2 miles away at another's house. However, that too was trashed just as the remainder of the storm passed.
We were left to stand in the corner of the house, Pastor Moxie, for 24 hours. We had to stand up and could not move because the winds were so fierce in the house. And we couldn't move, 4 of us in the corner. And I tell you, Pastor, when water hits sheetrock, sheetrock drops. In that corner, God will not allow the sheetrock in that house to drop.
And as disaster continued to unfold all around them as they left whatever was left of that structure and wandered off, Cornish explained the condition they met their community in.
It is becoming violent. And I encourage you that if you have anybody that lives in ABACO, get them out. If you have to charter a plane to get them out. And another reason why you need to get them out is because dead bodies are everywhere. And the count that they are given on the news to say that it's only 60, it is a joke. It is a joke. You can't walk 2 feet until you see a dead body somewhere. Everywhere. There are dead bodies float. They can't even pick them up fast enough and they're decomposing.
Bahamas Harvest Church's Project Hope has sprung into action assisting with evacuation efforts from ABACO. A walkathon is also scheduled for next week in an effort to raise funds for continued relief.
Be agents of hope.
In the end, the congregation lit a candle of hope.
And so now, Father, for those that have gone on with their journey, may their souls rest in peace. In Jesus' name, and everyone say amen.
For Our News, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Meanwhile, a former resident of an ABACO shantytown says his family's future is uncertain. His comments come as executives of the United Association of Haitians and Bahamians in the Bahamas say now is not the time to focus on nationality. They spoke with Jasmine Brown.
Some of those evacuees from communities in ABACO poured in here at the Victory Chapel on Minnie Street, and the tales they told us were completely terrifying.
We lose everything. God saved me and my wife and my family too.
29-year-old Wilkins deceased was a resident of the Pigeon P, one of many shanty towns in ABACO. He says he, his pregnant wife, and elderly father evacuated before the storm.
He really doesn't know right now. You know, they just have some medical issues that they're dealing with. He said that, you know, his head is hurting, maybe his blood pressure. He said that his wife is pregnant. He said also that his father has a few injuries. He was hit with some plywood and, you know, some flying debris. At times needing a translator, he said while the storm was hell, trying to get off the island of ABACO for nearly a week was even tougher, as they first tried to catch a boat off the island for several days before making their way to Treasure Key Airport, where they were finally able to catch a flight to New Providence on Sunday evening. While they are no longer living in the hellish conditions in ABACO, where their entire neighborhood has been decimated, deceased says they have come to an island where they have nothing and no one. He doesn't have any family here in Nassau, so he really doesn't have anywhere to go. He said they're going to stay at the shelter. That's what they told him, so they're going to stay at the shelter until, you know, something else happens. Deceased was one of several Haitian nationals we met at Victory Chapel, which is led by Reverend Dr. Antoine St. Louis.
We are working, and our focus is not on Haitian, because we born here. The Bahamas is our land. To us, the Bahamas come first. But we do not see a country, we see people. We are dealing with human beings, and we are trying to unite everyone. And we are glad at the shelters, and again, we give thanks to the government.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jasmine Brown.
In other news, cultural icon John "Chippy" Chipman has died. Opposition leader Philip Davis said in a statement this afternoon, "I have learned with sadness that we have lost another cultural icon in John "Chippy" Chipman. The great drummer's drum is now silent." John Chipman lived a long and fruitful life. He helped to define the modern Bahamas through the sound and beat of his drum and his pioneering contribution to Joncanoe. Davis added, Chipman left a cultural legacy for this country by passing on his great talents to his children, grand and great-grandchildren. He mentored so many others. He was a great Bahamian. Still to come, NEMA responds to rumors about the U.S. welcoming storm survivors, plus the Ranfurly home takes in young evacuees. Stay tuned.